I we gotta get serious for a minute. We gotta get serious. You feel me? We gotta talk. We gotta discuss some stuff. So I'ma give everybody a chance to, pop in before we discuss, cuz we have a lot of discussion to consider, and it's very serious. I really was hoping I wouldn't have to make this video, but since it seems that a fucking group of children seems to have more sense amongst all of them versus a multi-billion-dollar corporation, I guess this is what we're talking about now. I don't understand it either, but we gotta address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is YouTube's incompetence and the federal government, but we knew the latter was completely incompetent anyway. So, I actually looked into it while I had some spare time, of which clearly I have no shortage of that. That's basically all that I do have is just free time to do everything I want to do like an absolute mad lad. But I looked into it because it's something that everybody who's basically going to be making content on the internet is going to have to consider. This spans way beyond just YouTube at this point. So, COPPA is the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act. And basically, what that means is companies cannot track information to use targeted ads against minors. Minors being anybody who's 13 years or younger. Now, this is a pretty big thing because that's how most companies tend to operate. They take the data that they collect on you based on, things that you search, and then they basically sell that information to advertisers and make targeted ads. And that's the reason why you don't pay for services, because if you're not the consumer, you're the product basically. And companies of all kinds do this. Google itself has been doing this for a very long time. Google is the main man when it comes to this. Amazon is also guilty of it. If you've ever gone shopping on Amazon for like a day, and then you used to use old school Skype, I don't know if it still does it, but like Skype would have ads on the side, and those ads would be pertaining to things that you looked for on Amazon recently. So companies basically use you to make a profit by selling ads that are targeted to you based on the things that, the algorithm finds you looking up or things that you like. Now, the problem with this is COPPA stops the collection of data from minors, which is people who are 13 years and under. And this sort of thing, like, YouTube got into a lawsuit over it because it was found that it was doing just that with minors. Now, to what degree, I don't know. I'm not sure if people who were clearly listed as being 13 or younger were doing it, but I can only assume were the targets, but I can only assume that it was people lied about their age, and that's a pretty common thing online, and just YouTube didn't know about it. Because if you didn't know this, a lot of sites like DeviantArt, in order to get around the COPPA thing and not have to worry too much about tracking who's using the site, is they impose in their regulations and guidelines that people under the age of 13 aren't supposed to have accounts. Now, obviously, We know that not everyone's going to listen to the rules. People don't even read the guidelines half the time, and it's incredibly easy to just lie about your age in order to use a site. I know this because I did it at some point. All of us have done it at some point. We are all guilty of lying about our age at some point or another in order to access things that we otherwise wouldn't have had access to. And it's not like a major thing because most companies will just shrug it off and be like, all right, if you say, as long as they're not caught, they won't care. But YouTube essentially got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and they were taken to court over it. And part of the settlement was enforcing these new guidelines, and eventually it trickled down to content creators. Now, the issue with trickling it down to content creators is that, to a degree, what content creators are supposed to do is know their audience. But the problem is, on YouTube, you can have such a mixed audience. Even people that that shouldn't, it's not appropriate for their age group are going to end up watching your videos at some point or another anyway. It happens to everybody at some point. But trickling down, like, that kind of effect and saying that it's on us to watch out for who we're entertaining is not correct in any way, shape, or form for the company to do. We're in charge of knowing and pandering to a certain audience. That doesn't mean that our content is going to be, consumed by strictly that audience. And that's where YouTube's security system is supposed to come into place and, take care of things. But of course, like any other thing, YouTube doesn't have a functioning security system. In fact, YouTube has no functioning systems at all. The entire thing about the settlement was that it designated that it was the responsibility of the content creators to determine whether their content was for kids or not for kids. And this is where it gets tricky because a lot of us would just be like, okay, yeah, our content isn't for kids. The problem is you lose out on monetization by doing that. And a lot of people were like, it's not going to affect your monetization if you don't pander to children. But actually, it does. Because in order to be considered not eligible or not suitable for kids, you'd have to do something like cuss or do something that would generally not be considered appropriate for a younger audience, which ironically also fits the guidelines for demonetization according to YouTube's community guidelines. So you essentially either have to pander to kids or you can just pander to adults and not make any money, basically. It's extremely hard to knock yourself as not suitable for children and also stay within the boundaries of community guidelines. And we know that the only exception to this is if you're a massive YouTube channel, like you have a big following. Because if you're a smaller channel, the algorithm will find you and the algorithm will slaughter you, as it already has. Now, if you're pandering to kids, it also takes a huge toll. It doesn't block you from making money entirely, but it can be a huge toll to you because, let's face it, a lot of people do let their kids use YouTube as a substitute for actually watching over their kids and essentially letting the internet babysit their kids, which in itself is not a good plan to have. There's so much on the internet that if you just leave your kids unregulated, they're gonna stumble into something, and then you don't have a right to get angry because it's your fault for not doing a better job of watching over your kids and actually spending time with them. You let them loose on the internet, something's gonna happen eventually if you don't put anything in place to prevent something from happening. But the problem is, children are a significantly smaller audience, at least by YouTube standards. There's not that many extremely young kids using YouTube as there are adults making and watching the content. And advertisers know that. Advertisers know that the demographic is like majority kid and adult. Heck, my dad is 73 and he goes on YouTube looking for, ways to fix his car. So that just attests to the fact that there is not a lot of, balance when it comes to it. So advertisers are naturally going to swing more towards the bigger audience, which is, as we know, teenagers. So with so few people pandering to the child audience, Where does that leave people that are making content? Well, I'll tell you where it leaves them. In the dust. If you do things that are targeted towards children for your channel content, there's going to be a significantly smaller amount of advertisers that are going to be around to, carry you on their shoulders and want you to sponsor them. And that automatically means that you are at a disadvantage when it comes to monetizing your videos and making revenue. The other side of the coin is there is such a vague generalization in the terms that were explained by the FCC in this settlement, whereas it stated you can mark yourself as not suitable for children, but if you're found that you are suitable for children, they're going to fine you, which doesn't really make sense. I feel like it's better to be the other way around. If you mark yourself as suitable for kids and you end up not being suitable for kids, you should get fined, because then people can take advantage of posting things that could be potentially grooming or dangerous to kids. Whereas if somebody says that their content is not suitable for kids, then they don't have much of a reason to lie there. It's probably because the content is not suitable for kids. And this in itself might not seem so bad when you think about it at first. But then you come to realize that they generalized, saying that video game content is generally considered, or mostly considered, suitable for kids. So if you run video games on YouTube and you try to market as, suitable for, or not suitable for kids, and the FCC determines that it is, you could be potentially fined in the thousands of dollars for it. But the thing is, aside from the absurdity of being fined for literally saying that you don't want kids watching your content because you don't think it might be good for them to see, the FCC's generalization that all video games are for kids is something truly worrying, because we know firsthand that that's not the case. Not all video games, pardon the expression, are created equal. Games they generally think that a majority of games are games like Minecraft and Fortnite, and there are a lot of people that do that. But there are also people like me who play games like Faith and Outlast and Welcome to the Game. And all of those games have one thing in common. They are definitely not suitable for children. Not in the slightest. So this generalization not only hurts the industry and puts video games in general at risk of being mobbed by unhappy parents, but it also means that the FCC really didn't think about this much before they actually decided to make the statement. Now, the good news is there is a way to get around this sort of thing, and that is because video games, no matter where you are usually ranked in the ESRB system. Whenever you see an advertisement for God of War or something, it'll usually say rated E for everyone, rated T for teen, rated AO for adults only, rated M for mature. And that sort of system, if it was implemented, since YouTube's gaming side literally has a area during streams and uploads where you can mark what game you're playing, it could be linked to the ESRB rating system, and it could be managed like that, and it could automatically flag the video as, hey, this isn't suitable for kids because it's a game that's rated M. The bad news is, what are the odds that you think YouTube is actually going to spend money on bettering their site? There is no odds. So generally speaking, unless you break guidelines, or you're ready to go to court and determine, hey, this game was rated, not E for everyone, so kids shouldn't be watching it, we're basically backed into a corner at this point. There's so much wrong with the way that this was determined to be explained and the way they're going to enforce it. Thankfully, we still have time. We could always do what we did before and try to petition the FCC to, get their heads out of their asses and actually use their brain cells. But I don't think that's going to happen. We could try telling Google there is a pre-made system that you can use to get around this without us having to bear the liability because you're too lazy to do it. But again, it's Google, and YouTube has failed to listen to its community for I don't know how many years now. So it's going to be significantly harder for content creators to create the things that they want to do. It's bad. Oh, hi Jen, welcome to the stream. I forget that you live in Canada. To recap, the new enforcements on YouTube were caused by YouTube losing a lawsuit and the FCC stepping in and determining, well, here's how you can make it up to us. And it basically involves YouTube sucking the FCC's cock and not being able to think for itself at all. So there's really one of two ways that you can go about making content on YouTube now. You can either mark yourself, if you mark yourself as not suitable for kids, essentially what's going to happen is you're still going to be at a high risk of not, being able to receive monetization for your videos. Because generally, if you're doing something that quote unquote makes your video not suitable for kids, that usually means you're violating one of YouTube's other community guidelines. Sorry, my screen hasn't been up this entire time and I just been gabbing. It usually means that you're breaking one of YouTube's guidelines. Some of the things that you can do to make it so that your video is intentionally not suitable for kids includes swear words. You better not say heck. Oh, I'm demonetized. You could also show content in your video that's generally that would be considered not suitable for kids. But if it's not suitable for kids, basically, then it means that you're violating the terms of service. And that gives YouTube's the grounds to give you strikes and penalties for basically not pandering to kids. It's great, isn't it? On the other hand, if you're determined to be suitable for children, yes, unfortunately, Jen, it applies to everyone who uses YouTube. You see, because YouTube is a United States-based company, and it has to follow U.S. law, that means all of its other branches have to too. So regardless of your location, whether you're in the States, Canada, the United Kingdom, the European Union, if you are a content creator on YouTube, you have to comply with this because the platform you're using is US-based. That part I can understand. What I don't understand is the rest of it. There's no reason for it other than the fact that YouTube could have argued this. YouTube could have argued this absolutely and could have just agreed with we'll do better to crack down on minors and refrain from taking information. And it just decided to lay down and take it, basically. It decided, you know what? We'll save ourselves money just by doing this. And that's the whole other issue. How about kids don't just watch YouTube? It's because a lot of the times nowadays it's so commonplace where if you don't want your kids to be bothering you, just turn on YouTube and let them watch that. But that's a shitty form of parenting, and it just makes you look terrible and lazy when you're letting your kids spend more time on a tablet than you are with them. And that's the other thing. Why don't they make a rule that you have to be a certain age or older? See, companies avoid this exact thing by putting this in their guidelines. I said that earlier. Companies like DeviantArt, Tumblr, they make it so you have to be age 13 or 14 or older, and then you can use their site. But it's so easy for people to lie, and people forget that this law exists and that you can report people for wrongly using the website. YouTube and Google, I'm pretty sure, do have this as a term of service. The issue is kids lie, and then parents don't want to spend time with their kids. They'd rather just give them a tablet and say, leave me alone, I don't want to deal with you. And that's the whole issue. Because when parents are being shitty, it's literally a case of entitled parents. Parents complained that their kids' content was being tracked, but parents were the ones that were allowing it to happen. It's a case of don't tell my kid what to do, and also don't let my kid have consequences for the actions that I've done. It's so convoluted. And like I said earlier, I don't know if you were here for this, but even if we wanted to go through with these new guidelines, even if if you're marked as having a child suitable content and your content isn't actually suitable for children, or if you're marked as having content that you marked as not suitable for children and it's deemed suitable for children by FCC standards, you will receive a fine in the thousands of dollars. It was around like $45,000, if I believe, if I'm correctly remembering it. But as far as I've seen from what I've researched, if your content is deemed unsuitable for children after you marked it as suitable for children, to my knowledge, I don't think there is a penalty. I think you just get a slap on the wrist from YouTube, which is really, really bad because content creators know their audience and know better than anybody what's going to be suitable for children. Whereas YouTube still hasn't cleaned up all the predators on its site now. So if predators want to make grooming content that make it easier for them to manipulate children, and it's seen as, not suitable for children in the end, oh, well, we basically just gave pedophiles the winning card. The way that people are making money on YouTube is basically what's in danger. It's also just in general endangering people who are making content, because they generalized it as saying anything that's considered, suitable for children that you mark as unsuitable for children will give you the fine. And then their standards for it were basically any video games and anything animated, anything that could potentially appeal to a child. Well, yeah, cartoons are going to appeal to children. But if I showed you a Cyanide and Happiness short, you're going to determine pretty damn quickly that a kid probably shouldn't be watching this. And the other side of it is they basically took the stance that kids play video games, so therefore video games must be suitable for kids. But here's the issue. Not all video games are suitable for kids. Outlast 2, the Whistleblower Trilogy, Man of Medan, Until Dawn, Faith, SCP Containment Breach, a lot of the games that are really popular are horror games. And as horror continues to evolve, things have gotten more and more mature in terms of, the content that is being produced. Content that kids just shouldn't be exposed to. And there's a workaround for this if we end up going down this path. And that's the fact that games automatically are ranked by the ESRB system. So like I said, if you've ever seen like rated E for everyone or rated T for teen, or M for mature, or AO for adults only. That system exists so that people who shouldn't be playing certain games don't get their hands on those games. It's basically a warning system. And considering that YouTube already has a system in place where if you're playing a game or streaming a game, there's a little box where it can say, hey, you're playing this game, then they can automatically put in information for each of those games saying the ranking for those games, and the system can automatically determine what age group this game is for. So if it's E for everyone can watch the stream. If it's T for teen, only people who are 14 or older can watch the stream. If it's adult only, you need to be 18 to 21 or older. It's a mess is what it is at this point. Well, you see, my good Jen, they don't have to give their information to YouTube because YouTube is owned by Google. And if you wanted to run a YouTube channel, you had to make a Google account, which means all of your information is on Google. All of it. They own all of it. And if you are already monetized, basically, then they've had your information for the longest. And I found this out recently, you actually have to file a different kind of tax form on your tax returns if you're getting monetization through YouTube. It's really, really weird. I don't understand it quite that well either, but to the people who encourage people to join YouTube, it's a mess. It's something. The worst part is that there are easy solutions if this ends up going through. But YouTube is not going to take any of them because YouTube in general seems to have a fear of actually taking care of its website. The website which lost Google and Alphabet $1 billion at some point. Whoops. Now, there's still good news is that this change isn't going to be going in until I think either December or January. So we still have time to do something about it. And by do something, I mean we can just harass the shit out of the FCC until they're forced to take this back and either revamp what kind of punishment YouTube and Google get or to drop this absurd nonsense, because it's very clear by their vague wording that they care less. They're not so much doing it for the children as they are because the FCC loves to fuck shit up. And if you're wondering why I'm telling you we should bother the FCC about this, it's because we all know that the FCC has done something like this before, okay? If you guys think the FCC, the name FCC, rings a few bells, it's because these are the same people who were pushing for the end of net neutrality and who decided that, the internet should be a pay-to-view program. So yeah, now they're messing with content that, they couldn't win with that, so now they're looking for new ways to essentially fuck with everybody. And that's not cool. Yeah, once again, a child coming into contact with sensitive material like gore and violence is the parents' fault. Exactly. Like, I get it. When it comes to parenting, you're going to have times when you're going to get exhausted and you're going to, you're not going to want to do things with your kid. And if you think that's the case, then here's my easy solution. Don't have a kid. You cannot just take your child whenever you feel like tired of their crap and just throw them online without any sort of restrictions, especially on a site like YouTube, which refuses to actually manage its content. That is entirely on a parent's fault if their kid happens to stumble across something mildly upsetting. Ooga booga, you have no one but yourself to blame for that. I'm sorry to tell you the truth. And a lot of people aren't going to want to hear that, but you need to. You're putting people's livelihoods at risk here because you determined that you didn't want to take care of your brat. Well, then maybe you shouldn't have had one. You're going to be the parent that ends up berating their child for not doing good enough in school or not following in your footsteps to a T. And that gets sickening. It is no one. Let me make it very clear so that any parents watching can understand that it is entirely their fault if something happens to their kid on the internet or they see something that they didn't want to see. All right. I know this is earth-shattering and some people might not be ready to hear it, but sit down, boomers. Here's the truth. If you had the kid, they're your responsibility. It is no one else's job to take care of your kid. It is no one else's job to babysit your kid but your own. We are not getting paid to specifically contour our content to your child's interests. And if they get upset at something that they couldn't handle, congratulations. You failed somewhere as a parent because you decided you would spend more time ignoring your kid and letting them wander the internet for God knows how long without any supervision than take care of them and actually educate them. That's how we got idiots on Tumblr. This is how sites like Tumblr became so toxic. Because people decided they would rather, have somebody else watching over their kid than actually take responsibility for their actions and raise the kid themselves. Also, my screen never changed back. That's cool. I don't know potentially what's worse is the fact that this is a testament to the fact that parenting has fallen so far that now everybody else has to pay the price because parents are shitty and they don't want to actually take care of the kids, or the fact that now everyone who makes content on YouTube is going to have to pay the price because Karen over here decided she didn't like it when little Timmy discovered Proto, the antivirus machine. There's absolutely no excuse for it either because there's a plethora of devices and parental control. Parental controls is something that straight up, comes with every new device basically now, because everyone's getting into the techno family trend, and there's no excuse for having to hold everyone else accountable because you're a failure of a parent. So in the meantime, what we can do is essentially storm the FCC with complaints. Well, that's the other thing about it too. YouTube has their own kids app, and that the FCC should be satisfied with that. They should just be like, well, you should focus on determining whether content is suitable for kids or not based on, one, not having a robot do all the sorting, two, implementing something to track what kind of video games and their ratings, track what kind of video games people are playing and what the ratings are according to the handily made government regulated rating system, and focus on making sure all the kids' content ends up on the YouTube Kids app, because there's a lot of content on the YouTube Kids app that shouldn't be on the YouTube Kids app. And then focus on making YouTube the adult version of the Kids app, basically. But no, let's just take it all out on everybody ever. And it's already starting to affect a lot of people. All right? An entertainer's job is to pander to a specific audience. It is YouTube's job to understand that that specific audience is not the only one watching, and to regulate who legally should be and who legally shouldn't be. It is not our job to a lot of us don't even get paid by YouTube, and we have to do this shit. It's not our job. We don't work at the corporation. We shouldn't have to do this. YouTube is more than capable of doing this without us. This is literally just another example of, the government deciding to work with the corporations rather than listening to the actual people, which I'm frankly getting sick of. Not all YouTubers get paid, and you're right. But again, if you wanted to use YouTube, you had to make a Google account, and your Google account essentially has all your information. And considering that this is now implemented by the FCC, which is directly tied into by Congress and is a government agency, I don't think it'd be too far of a stretch to assume that they're going to end up running you through the IRS or something and trying to get you to pay it through that. Or they'll just what they'll probably end up doing more likely is you either pay the fine and show proof that you paid the fine, which I can already tell is going to go horribly with how poorly YouTube manages it, or if you refuse to pay the fine, they'll end up terminating your account and permanently banning you from the service. Which, again, not a helpful solution. Not at all good. The main targets of this are basically anybody who makes animations on YouTube and anybody who plays video games. And we're all in trouble. We're all in trouble. We are all in so much trouble. Thanks, Karen. Just remember, baby boomers, someone's going to be operating your life support, and that someone might be me. You best hope that I don't find out you had a hand in this, because if we do, we might not respond that well, So in conclusion, YouTube is basically putting the nail in the coffin and is killing its service. Google never should have purchased YouTube. Google doesn't manage this service at all after it lost them $1 billion. YouTube is so poorly run and hurting right now that it just decided everybody else has to hurt now too. And that's not fair. A lot of us just want to make our content and make people laugh, and making a little bit of money in the process is just, a bonus to it. This isn't fun. This is not good at all. So, bottom line is, if you're in the States, you better start contacting the entirety. Just fucking bother Congress as much as you can Just bother them until they have to listen. I know it's a stretch to think that our senators and our House of Representatives is going to listen to what we have to say, considering we put them in power, and then immediately they started taking bribes from corporations instead of listening to their own people. But blow up your House and senators' phone numbers until they have to listen, because by extension, they help run the FCC. And blow up the FCC, basically. Just not literally, I mean. Don't actually blow up the FCC. We're not ready for that step in revolution yet. But contact them, spam them, blow up their numbers, their emails, contact everybody, and make noise. Because we did it once. We've done it more than once. If we just keep badgering them, eventually they're going to have to listen to us. And if they don't, then we may take this more literally. Then you may take that statement to its absolute most literal conclusion. But we just have to keep screaming until they hear us, because Google's a mega corporation, and corporations don't listen to people, they listen to profit. So we have to take this to our crumbling government. And if you're not located in the United States, well, then I implore you to call them anyway. Because the second that this is an international problem, and the second that all of our allies decide this isn't cool, then we have a little bit more power over the government and, by extension, the corporation. This is just another example of the fact that, you know, the government doesn't know how to control corporations, because secretly the corporations are actually running the government. Yep. And the worst part is these guidelines do not auto set for like previous videos. So if you have thousands of videos, you now have to dig back through all of them, and manually determine whether each and every one of them is suitable for children or not. And if one of them is even slightly incorrect by the FCC standards, poof, there goes your channel. Yep. This is pretty much what it's come to at this point. This is a classic case of the corporations are running the government, basically. And even though it looks like the government might be cracking down in some way or another, it's mostly because they're going to get a big chunk of cash out of this. Or more likely because the government has literally not controlled a corporation in such a long time that they no longer know how to. The future is now, baby boomers. The future is now. Anyways, as this story continues to unfold, I might, occasionally... I'm not fucking marking any of my videos as... From this point going forward, I'm not marking them as anything short of not suitable for children. And if someone comes after me with that, I'll just straight up tell them, did you look at the ESRB rating on this game? No? I suggest you do, because I'm not paying a fine for a game that was literally marked by its creators as being for a certain age group. You stinky ass fucking silent generation looking head ass. There, now it's definitely not suitable for children because I swore. The comments? Fuck if I know. Comments are unregulated as it is. The only thing that the system really catches are spam comments, so. At this point, it's important that we just don't lose hope and that we just keep talking about it and we start just bullying the shit out of the government for what they've done. The US government knows what it's done and it will pay for it accordingly. Does that make sense? So yeah, bother the shit out of my representatives. Bully them, badger them, call them pathetic, demoralize them, call them money-grubbing hogs because that's exactly what they are. Threaten them if you want to. Tell them that they're going to lose all of their money and that they won't be reelected if they keep this shit up. Tell them that the revolution is coming and that soon the United States government will be overturned in favor of a one-branch tyranny. Because clearly, the bicameral legislature is doing absolutely nothing right. Nothing. We've barely passed any functioning laws, and what we have done is mostly run on executive orders anyway. Laws aren't being made anymore. Everything that this country has done in the last 4 years has been done solely through executive orders, or almost solely through executive orders, because our president can't get the House, which literally leans in his favor, to work with him. It's up to us now. This country is run by the people. Let's show them that. Anyways, I think I've screamed into a microphone enough for a couple hours. My throat is sore now. Thank you all for attending this wonderful, 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 wonderful shit stream. And I hope I'll be able to see you for the new year. Stay safe. Bully my government. Tell the United States Congress and the FCC exactly what you think of these new policies and make them change it. If we did it once for net neutrality, I am positive we can do it again. I believe in you guys. United, we stand. Divided, we fall. And as a wise man once said in reference to storming Area 51, if we all put the effort in, they can't stop us all. Thanks for coming to today's stream, guys. I really appreciate you listening. Please don't let this die, because if it does, not only is YouTube going to be screwed, but a lot of other websites are going to end up getting screwed over by it too. And I really want to keep creating content for you guys. Thanks. Bye.